Brought to you by Hug House Productions.
Hi, hello, listener of Never Morphed. If you like this show, I am convinced you are going to love The Newest Olympian by Mike Schubert. Why am I so certain? Because that's one of the shows that inspired this show. Real ones who listen to the credits already know. Each week, Mike dives into the Percy Jackson series, which I love, joined by guests who are longtime fans of the Rick Riordan series. If you haven't read these books yet, this is the perfect way to get started and read along with Mike. They're so good. And like Animorphs, they're kids' books that touch on way more serious topics than you might expect. And they're about worldwide mythologies, starting with Greek and Roman. I know you gays love mythology. If you have already read the books and know how good they are, you'll love this series too. The dramatic irony, man. And if you know about the books from the Disney Plus series, Mike has done interviews and conversations with some of the cast of the show on The Newest Olympian too. Mike is a great host, a great editor, and obviously a huge inspiration for me. You can find The Newest Olympian in the show notes or wherever you get your podcasts. Go subscribe right now and enjoy.
Brought to you by Hug House Productions.
Welcome back to another episode of Nevermorphed, a series in which I read every Animorphs book for the first time. As always, this podcast is about books for kids, but this podcast is definitely absolutely not for kids. And yes, it is time. I finally get to that insane moment at the end of the book. Hi, hello? Thank God I have good old Sia and Joseph's here to give me 0 hints. Enjoy our final episode of Book 6. And as always, if you can, please support the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund.
I also just want to comment on like the description in this chapter of like this sensation of getting a yerk in your head, because I believe this is the first time we get like an in-depth description of what like having a yerk enter your brain feels like.
Yes.
And Jake says that it is extremely painful.
Yeah, I forgot.
He compares it to he says at one point it was pain like I had never even imagined before. It was like someone was drilling a hole into my ear straight into my brain.
Yeah.
And just that knowledge that like obviously that sucks for Jake, but also thinking about like how every human controller has to experience this pain every 3 days.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because every 3 days the yerk in their head has to leave to go into the yerk pool and then come back.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh.
And there are still people who are totally compliant and are fine with this. That's so wild.
And just fucking volunteered.
Yeah. Jesus. Wow. God, these books are so good. So, chapter 17, we are getting who this yerk is, because this yerk is a whole person. Like, they have a history. So, as Jake is like trying to figure out what to do, but he can't do anything because he has a yerk in his head that is controlling him. He is trying to warn Cassie and Marco, but he doesn't know how. And he says, I had to do something quick. I had to warn Cassie and Marco. Surely they would guess what was happening. They were the 2 people in the whole world who were closest to me. Surely they would realize I was no longer myself. Wouldn't they? Which, again, psychological horror. Yeah. Straight up what this is. This is such a good take on the, like, which doppelganger is the real person? Like, that trope can be kind of overplayed for sure, but I really love how it's executed here, especially because he is witnessing all of this and he can't do anything.
Yeah, like this is just like an insane amount of psychological horror, and I feel like it is just like genuinely really fascinating having switched from like the psychological horror earlier in the book of Jake, you know, knowing that his brother is essentially possessed and having to hide it, to this chapter with Jake being the one who is possessed. And not just by any yerk either.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Jesus Christ, this book is really fucked up. So Okay, so Jake is trying to communicate with the others, but he can't, obviously. He's trying to communicate with the others, but he can't because he's been Yeerked. And the Yeerk is communicating with him. So we learn that this Yeerk is Temrash 114. He was formerly Temrash 252, but he got promoted. So, and then he says that he used to be the Yeerk who was in Tom, but he was doing such a good job that he got promoted, and the Yeerk that was in Tom is going to be put in the body of the governor. That was the plan for him. So again, confirmation that this Tom Yeerk was trying to move up the ladder and was doing a really good job and was going to be the one to make everything go to fuck forever. Like, he was going to be the Yeerk in the president of the United States. And now he is in Jake. And he was the one controlling Tom this entire time with Jake. So he knows Jake. And he knows about their history and their background. This is the nightmare scenario. This is the worst possible case.
Like, it genuinely, like, could not be worse. Like, it really, really couldn't. I also just love this little section here where Jake and Temrash are talking, and Jake, trying to be all defiant, says, "I'll never tell you who the..." And then he gets cut off as Temrash says, "Oh, the others? You mean Cassie, Marco, Rachel, Tobias, who's sitting in the tree, the one remaining Andalite, Aximile, Esger, Thistle?"
Yeah.
And I feel like
I'm in your brain, bitch. I have your knowledge already.
That reminder that, like, even, you know, right now, so soon after the Yeerk has gotten into Jake's brain, he knows fucking everything.
Yeah, it's like
and even
immediate.
if he didn't, and even if he didn't, after being in Tom's body for so long, he'd probably recognize all of these kids.
Oh, yeah.
He would definitely recognize Rachel, Tom's cousin.
And Marco, who's been around for forever.
And Cassie, who,
right.
You know, like, he would definitely recognize them. And, like, God, it's just, like, so fucked up.
It's so fucked up. This book, from here on out, is extremely fucked up.
Yes.
So Temrash is talking through Jake, trying to act normal. Jake is, you know, trying to fight back, but it's just not working. And he's already like, oh my God, is this forever? Like, am I fucked forever? Rachel and Axe show back up. And Axe sees Jake, and he immediately clocks it. There is that, like, look of disgust, I think, on Jake's face because there is an Andalite there. And Axe is like, that's a Yeerk. That is not Jake. Fuck yes, Axe, my boy. Good job, Axe, my boy. Chapter 18. They're all grilling Jake now because even Marco and Cassie are like, yeah, he's kind of off. Something is weird here. So because of how Yeerks work, there's really no typical, like, shapeshifter, doppelganger, like, say something only I would know, but because the Yeerk has all the information in Jake's brain. So that's just not going to work. They're all being very smart about this. And Tobias is like, okay, so we just hold him for 3 days. If it is Jake, he is not going to mind because he knows that this is what we have to do. If it's not Jake, he'll die in 3 days. The Yeerk will die because we're not going to let him get back to the Yeerk pool. So either way, this is going to be fine, which is brilliant. Really fucking good plan. And the Yeerk, of course, is like, oh, oh no, I didn't. Oh, that's smart. Oh. And Cassie is like, well, we can't do that because he's a person. And he's a child, and he can't just go missing for 3 days.
Jake is a child, and his parents might notice if he's not home for 3 days, guys.
Yeah. He's got, like, parents who love him. Like, we should probably account for that.
Like, no offense, but this isn't a Tobias situation. Like,
exactly. So then they decide that to make up for this, Axe is going to morph into Jake. And I love this because Axe, we know, he's like learning how slang works, but that's it. Like he's still not really good at knowing how to be a human person in a convincing way. So this is very funny.
Yes.
This is so good. And when Axe goes in for the DNA, Temrash is like, ew, ew. And so now like the jig is up. They all know that Jake has for sure been yerked.
He literally screams, "Get your hand off me, Andalite filth."
Yeah.
And everyone is like, okay, that's not something
Yeah.
Jake would say.
Yeah. Oh, Jake's always saying that, man.
Also, an interesting thing to me, just because I feel like this is something we were talking about earlier this episode, is that I do kind of feel like one of the things that tips the kids off early to the fact that this is not Jake is that self-sacrificial hero complex Jake, if this had really been him, would have been like, okay, you guys can lock me up for 3 days. I understand. It's what you have to do.
Absolutely. He wouldn't have even questioned it. He would have been like, yeah, that's the smart thing to do.
And the year, you know, I think probably through a combination of like A, just like having not been in Jake's brain for super long, but also B, just like how the Yeerks are and how Temrash is, like it just did not seem like a valid plan to him to try to just go along with this and figure out a way out later.
Yep. There's one thing in this chapter that genuinely I thought was a poor writing choice that really bothered me.
Yeah, please.
When they're talking about this plan, Temrash Jake literally does say, like, this isn't like your family, Tobias. Like, my family is going to notice if I'm gone because they care about me. And it bothers me so much that nobody addresses that. Jake would literally fucking never say that. Before anything else, that should have been what tipped them off that this is absolutely a yerk. Like, it really bothers me that nobody commented on that it was said, and then nothing was done with it. Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely not.
Interesting. See, I think for me, I kind of interpreted that moment where like Jake says that, like very out of character, you know, Jake quotation mark says that, and then no one really comments it. I think my interpretation of that was that like people did notice, but were just kind of like silently like, that's not really a thing that Jake would say, but not necessarily like calling that out explicitly at this moment, because like, while I think that is definitely like something that would be out of character for Jake to say, like I think could conceivably be something that like could just be, you know, Jake fucking having just gotten blunt force head trauma or whatever, rather than just like definite like, okay, this is a yerk. And I kind of think for me that like that is the moment where everyone starts being like, this doesn't seem like Jake. And then that moment on the next page when he calls Axe Andalite filth is when everyone's like, okay, yeah, definitely, yeah.
For sure. I just wanted anybody to comment on it.
Yeah, I love Tobias.
I love Tobias. Don't say that shit to him. God.
Don't say that shit. I love Tobias. And I think also like I think you're totally right. Like I do not think that is something that like Jake would ever say.
No, not even like while concussed. Absolutely fucking not. Like Marco, sure. Rachel, probably. Cassie, no. Jake, no.
Yeah, I think particularly given the context that, like, you know, Jake has been friends, at least on some level, with Tobias since before all of this. And, like, you know, Jake was friends with Tobias when Tobias was still, like, actively in this situation and probably has, like, a deeper understanding of it than the other kids do.
And Jake's best friend is Marco. Like, he knows the emotional and practical toll having a family that can't show up for you. He knows what that's like. He knows what that does to a kid. You know, like there's just no fucking way. I was so like, I was offended on behalf of Jake and Tobias in that moment of like, you know, even if just for Tobias's sake, somebody should say like, our Jake would never say something so cruel to Tobias.
Absolutely.
Bothered me.
I just love Tobias so much. I keep saying that, but like my perfect bird boy.
Yes. And I do think I did not have a moment in any of these books that I genuinely thought was bad writing until this very short moment in book fucking 6.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I am a picky bitch. I was a professional culture critic for years.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I've been mad about a writing choice. So chapter 19, the Yeerk is trying still to convince everybody that he's like normal Jake, and everyone is like, shut the fuck up, man. Like, it's not happening. It's not gonna work. And they do comment on like, if you were normal Jake, you would be fine with this plan. So every time you try to wriggle out of it, we know like it's more evidence. You're doing a bad job here, buddy. And then Axe morphs into Axe Jake, and Jake sees himself outside of himself, while he is also in himself, not able to control himself. So this just must be like a real mindfuck for Jake across the board. Chapter 20, Jake and Temrash are just being bitchy back and forth to each other. It's so fun. And then
they hate each other so bad.
So bad.
Like, so fucking bad.
It's delightful.
Like, it's scary, but also kind of funny.
Yes. Yeah. Delightful for now. Will not continue being delightful. My note here says, and then Temrash opens his .mp4 folder in VLC and is like, okay, let's go. And he is showing him the memories. He's showing him like a lot of things. He's basically just like visualizing for Jake. So he's showing him his friends struggling and being scared. He's making fun of Jake for having fantasies of being a good basketball boy. And like, I gotta say, that is just lame. That's a really lame thing to try to make fun of him for. Like, this is the worst you can do, is that he wants to be good at basketball and popular and respected because he's good at basketball. Try harder. Like, if that's the worst dirt you can pull up on him, that's nothing. He's a good boy. Your tactics are not going to work. He's a good boy. But then he is playing them Tom's perspective of a conversation that they had back when Temrash was in Tom's body. So the passage I'm going to read out here is, it was just as I remembered it, except that now I felt Tom's emotions, not mine. The real Tom. The true Tom who was crushed beneath the Yeerk's control. He was crying, sobbing, helplessly, silently. Not Jake, he cried. Leave Jake alone. Leave my brother alone. I'll never trouble you again. I swear it. Just leave Jake alone. So that's fucked up. Can
I also just continue us real quick into the next paragraph?
Sure.
The Yeerk waited while the full impact of direct contact with Tom's mind sank into my own. Tom was defeated, desperate. He spent his time wishing he could die.
Yeah. Oh my god. This book is so fucked up. So Jake really does note that resignation and that defeat. And he's like, if I get to that point, I'm fucked. If I ever think that there's not a possibility that I can win here, I'm fucked. I have to stay vigilant. I have to stay on top of this. I have to keep fighting back. Which just like, Jesus. So Temrash knows that Jake can morph, and he knows that he can morph into a flea. And Tobias didn't know he had a flea on him earlier in the book. So at this point, I was like, oh, this is going to be an issue. He's going to turn into a flea and he's got to get on Tobias, and Tobias isn't even going to know. And like, that's going to be a whole issue. That does not happen. But I was right about the ropes, kind of. I was right in the opposite direction. But I was already here catastrophizing. So chapter 21, my first note is, this book goes so hard, and I didn't even know half of it. So they are keeping Jake captive in this like shed that is out near the woods by Cassie's farm, and they're taking turns watching him. they have him tied up. They're watching him all day. And then at night, Rachel falls asleep. And the Yeerk is like, all right, sick, let's go. So the Yeerk morphs Jake's body. And because he had seen this recurring dream with Jake and Tom, which happened while Jake was asleep, or he's just seeing it because he has the mind link, I think. He's like, oh yeah, tiger. Okay, that seems pretty sick. Let's take the morph from your trauma dream. Yeah. And so he morphs into a tiger, which, breaks him out of the rope.
Ropes,
I still think that the flea would have been the right choice, all things considered, because it just would have been like way harder to see, and he probably could have hidden somewhere and like, but whatever. I'm not the Yeerk making the choices, so...
There would be downsides to that too, though, because a flea has like very poor senses and cannot travel very far.
Yes, and they do talk about that later.
I also keep finding myself wondering as we're talking about this, like, I do feel like a lot of the mistakes that Temrash is making here are just because, like, he was so fucking thrown off from, like...
Oh, yeah.
Being surrounded by, the Animorphs, probably the only humans on the planet who could instantly clock that he is a Yeerk from like the instant that he woke up in Jake's body. And I keep finding myself wondering, in like a fucked up AU where like Jake just got separated, and by the time the other Animorphs found him, Temrash had like had enough time to get fully situated, see all of Jake's memories, like really like dig into Jake's brain the way he's had a chance to do with Tom.
Yeah, study the character.
Would they have noticed?
Right. Absolutely. I still think that Axe would have. I think that ultimately that would have been the only saving grace.
Yeah.
So Yeerk Tiger Jake gets out, and he smells humans and runs. And my next note is, gets lost, big fucking idiot alert over here, guys. And Jake notices that the tiger, Jake Yeerk, gets lost. And he's like laughing at the Yeerk, and the Yeerk is like, whatever, you don't even know. I'm gonna get out of here. And then
stop being mean to me.
Yeah. It's really, really good. So the Yeerk decides, like, okay, this tiger morph is not working. I should do a falcon morph. But then he gets hit by something, and it is an owl. And it's not just any owl. It's Cassie morphed as an owl. Because they all fucking knew this was going to happen. Exactly this. Rachel wasn't fucking asleep. Rachel wasn't asleep. She was a red herring. It was a ruse. She fucking knew. And the others were like out in the woods waiting for him to do exactly this. And they're like, you're not going to fucking get away with it. And the Yeerk is scared shitless. He really was not prepared for this. Chapter 22. Temrash, I say, is going through the entire morph Rolodex, and he's like, okay, there's like, I'm kind of shit out of luck. They don't really have any morphs that would be good for this situation. I don't even know what that would be, but they don't really have anything. So at this point, even the flea is a bad call. He points out, like, yeah, they don't have a lot of travel time. And so Temrash is like, okay, well, I like this wolfy thing. Let's fucking be wolf. Let's be wolf. What are you going to do about it? And he bees wolf and runs through the forest. And because he's a wolf, he now has a sense of direction, which we got experience with in a previous book, how they can like navigate pretty well. So he's like, this is fine, and I'm so good at everything, and I can navigate. And then he runs into the other wolf pack again.
That's like my favorite callback to
so funny
book. Just like it's so fucking good. I just want a little like spin-off novella of this wolf pack being like, these fucking guys again.
So this is all super funny, and Jake is also meanwhile distracting the Yeerk by just narrating shit out loud. And the Yeerk is like, I know, I'm in your brain. You don't have to communicate. I already know all these things. And Jake is like, yeah, and so this and this and this, like just to annoy him.
Jake is like, I feel like this is the most like annoying little brother we have seen Jake so far. And it's kind of funny, but
so
also
good.
kind of fucked up that we're seeing him do this to like the Yeerk who was in his older brother's brain.
Yes, exactly. It's so good. And also, yes, deeply fucked up. So Marco and Elephant Rachel arrive and they're like, okay, can you just like stop? Like, you're not gonna get away with it. You are going to die. Just fucking give up. And the Yeerk is like, fucking fine. Fine. I'll stop trying to run away. So he is talking to Jake and he says, you are fools, the Yeerk said, having read my thoughts. It is madness to fight when you cannot win. Yes, it is foolish. It is crazy, I agreed. And it's why we will win. A lot of like big activist feelings here. I thought this was a really good passage. I thought that this being the focus of this book was really good and really important.
Yes. This is framing like the Yeerk's tendency to be like very strategic and militaristic and to retreat if they do not have like a very sizable chance of winning as something that has allowed them to get far, but ultimately is going to be their downfall. While framing the human tendency to keep fucking fighting, even in a hopeless situation, as a great strength of humanity and why humanity will ultimately be able to triumph over the Yeerks.
Yes, it's really good. And again, like this is just such a core tenet of activism against oppression, is that you have to continually imagine a world in which you are free, or else that world can never exist. And you have to hold on to that. I really loved that being a focus of this book.
Same.
So chapter 23, the Yeerk keeps like vaguely trying to escape. It's not working. It's getting more tired. It's getting more feeble. It's having trouble focusing. And we realize that the Yeerk is starving to death. And again, the Yeerk is like neurologically connected to Jake. So Jake can feel this happening. He can feel the Yeerk dying of starvation. And it's not like he can feel it physically. Like he's just right along there for the ride. So he talks about how like it's not hurting him bodily, but it's just very disturbing to be privy to what it feels like to this Yeerk to be starving to death and the way that he is like losing functionality. So he is like feeling and seeing the Yeerk like think about being rescued. And like knowing that no matter what, he's pretty much fucked in the situation. He feels Temrash start giving up.
Yeah.
I feel like so disturbing.
This is so disturbing. Like, it is just fucking disturbing seeing this teenager have to experience what it is like to starve to death.
Yeah.
Because the alien parasite in his brain is starving to death. There's also this moment that like is fucked up, but also just like, I don't know, just makes me feel things where like the Temrash just kind of starts rambling about like the Yeerk homeworld and like how much like better he thinks the Yeerk homeworld is than Earth, and like his history on the Yeerk homeworld. And Jake says in narration that he knows that Temrash is actively dying right now, so he doesn't really interrupt and just kind of lets Temrash keep talking about his home planet as he is starving to death.
Yeah.
And like it is just like a really visceral moment for me.
Yeah. And important to note here, part of that rant is that Temrash talks about the Gedd. And the Gedd were a primitive monkey-like species, and they were the first host for the Yeerks. So he's talking about that as well. At one point, he almost escapes as a falcon, but Tobias, full on, grabs him by the head in his talons. And he says, if you try this shit, I will literally fucking kill you right now. And Temrash is like, you're not gonna kill your friend's body. And Tobias is like, oh, you think? Because this is what Jake would want. I will do it. I won't fucking hesitate. Get back inside. Tobias fucking rules in this book. Everybody is like really top of their game in this book, except for maybe like Rachel, which again, I'm just worried about. But really, really, really fucking good moment here. I don't doubt for a second that Tobias would absolutely crush Jake's skull if it meant this Yeerk escaping. At one point, Temrash, in this discussion about like the Ged and what have you, Temrash says that Jake should ask Axe about the story of the Yeerks and the Andalites. And that does not happen, and I am very anxious because I don't think it is going to be a good story. We all already know I don't fucking trust the Andalites. I don't trust that they are any less criminals of war here.
I mean, you were I saw in your notes, like, I can't remember if it was earlier in this book or in the previous book, just like commenting about like the very militaristic culture that Andalites have and how like, Axe seems to have been like very fully indoctrinated into that.
Yes, absolutely. It's really fucked up.
I feel sometimes like there's this interesting push and pull in this book, like in the series overall, between like the author's true political views and the fact that, you know, both of them, K.A. Applegate and Michael Grant, who wrote many of these books together, like they had to write a book series that I think Scholastic published, Scholastic was willing to publish in the 1990s. And we are still, it is the 2020s now. Scholastic is still constantly under fire for like editing marginalized people's books and like being really weird about marginalized people trying to like talk about their oppression in books. And so I can really feel that push and pull here where like there will be, you know, these textual moments where the authors are like praising the US military, talking about the US being like the greatest country on the planet.
Yeah.
But also I think you could very much argue for a reading of the Andalites as like a metaphorical representation of like the US and of the way that like US children can get indoctrinated into like American nationalism, and particularly from the viewpoint of military worship.
Jake gets a heads up from Cassie from Axe that he is about to enter what they call the fugue. And the fugue is the last few hours of this Yeerk's life. It starts with him with his life flashing before his eyes. Again, this is where we like learn more about, we see the Ged and what have you. We see the Yeerk's full life from when he was like born and swimming around with other Yeerks. Jake's body is shaking. Cassie is there with him. And then chapter 24 is the fugue.
One more comment about chapter 23, if I may, just like this little moment that I was like, oh, wow. Just this little moment where Cassie holds Jake's hand. And the narration says, I could feel it. So could the Yeerk, but he did not reject this small bit of comfort, even though it was intended for me and not him. And I feel like despite the fact that, you know, like Temrash is obviously like very villainous in this book, I feel like the authors did like crazy good job of both portraying him as villainous and scary in a way that really like increases like the fear level around the Yeerks, while also simultaneously, for lack of a better word, humanizing him and showing us like his fear, his desire for comfort in the final hours of his life. Like having experienced firsthand like the fear that the Yeerks experience while dying, knowing that like just like humans, they fear death when they are in pain, and at the end of their life they want to be comforted. Like does just make it really disturbing thinking about like all of the Yeerks who die in this series, because while, you know, I think that like the discussion of like, is it okay to kill people in a situation like this is too fucking complex for us to get into right now. We could spend like 8 hours talking about that and not even cover every angle of it. I think that's still like, I think one thing that I'm sure we can agree on is that like death is a very, very serious thing and should not be taken lightly, even in a situation like this. And I feel like they do such a good job here of reminding us that, you know, we can debate endlessly whether or not the Yeerks deserve to die for what they're doing. But at the end of the day, whatever we come down to, we do have to grapple with the fact that it hurts and it scares them and they do not want to die.
Like there's so much of media, if you're dealing with some sort of like category of opponent, those opponents all just become empty shells for action to happen to and for conflict to happen to and to like contribute to some conflict, but like, you know, they're basically like hollow NPCs. They don't fucking matter.
It's like the stormtrooper thing, right?
Exactly. And these books are like, yeah, we're not fucking doing that. When you kill a person, it's a person.
Yeah.
Like, and again, like you said, we can debate whether or not it's deserved or has to happen or anything, but nothing changes the fact that when you kill a person, you are killing a person.
Yep.
This whole end of this book is so upsetting and so sad and so beautiful and like, again, some of the most effective writing in this genre, or really in any genre I've ever read. The ending of this book is stunning. And I could go on about that forever. But the thing about chapter 24 is that it's a lot of that. And then something else happens that I have to talk about soon, or I will also die.
Let's jump into this. Yeah. Let's charge ahead.
So the Yeerk dies and Jake feels it, and it's very, 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 very bad, very upsetting, very beautiful. It's great. And then something else happens, and I'm gonna read this whole long passage, and it is long, and I don't care. I'm gonna read it. This is insane. Okay, so the narration says, and then I saw it, a creature or a machine, and this is like through the Yeerk's perspective that he is seeing this. This is like the last thing the Yeerk sees, I guess. So, okay, he says, a creature or a machine, some combination of both. It had no arms. It sat still as if unable to move on a throne that was miles high. Its head was a single eye. The eye turned slowly. Left. Right. I trembled. I prayed it would not look my way. And then it saw me. The eye, the blood-red eye, looked straight at me. It saw me. It saw me. No, no, I cried in silent terror. I looked away, and when I opened my eyes again, all I saw was a weird glow. The glow faded, little by little. I was trembling. It's over, Jake, Cassie said. And then my note just says in really, 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 really big text, now what the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? What the fuck? What the fuck was that? Why was there an Eye of Sauron or whatever? What is happening? What the fuck was that? You give me a whole fugue of a Yeerk dying, and then you're like, oh, and also, here's something. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck was this? What the fuck? I can't even make theories about this because I'm so stunned. What the fuck? What the fuck? And then that's how the book ends? Hello? Yeah, I guess you can't really say anything about this, huh?
I truly don't think there is a single word I could say about any of this without like massive fucking spoilers.
Yeah.
Like I keep thinking of like things I could say and then being like, no, not even that. I can't even. Well, on a lighter note, Chapter 25 involves confirmation that Axe and Jake Morph was fucking eating every single thing in the entire fucking house.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I think I was genuinely so stunned. I just didn't write notes for the rest of the chapter. But I do remember that, and it was so funny. And that's great.
There's also the thing that happens at the very end of the chapter. Do you recall that, or were you just so...
No, I was out of my fucking mind. I was like hovering above my body. This chapter knocked me out of myself. I was fully dissociated. I was like, I didn't even have the wherewithal to be Pepe Sylvia-ing. I was just gone.
Yeah. I fucking get that. Can I just read you the last little section of this chapter? I have it pulled up right now.
Please.
Okay. And this is like the last part of the book. The next day I did something stupid. At least Marco kept telling me it was stupid, but he didn't object very much. He understood. We all met at Cassie's barn, and I used her dad's cellular phone to call Tom at home.
Please keep reading. Oh my God.
I went partly into a wolf morph before I did, just enough to make the smallest changes. Enough to change the shape of my mouth and tongue and throat so that my voice would sound very different. He picked it up on the third ring. Yeah? I have a message, I said in a thick, twisted voice that did not sound at all like me. What? Tom asked. Don't give up, Tom. Don't ever give up. I hung up before he could say anything. Do you think Tom, the real Tom, heard it? Rachel asked. He heard, I answered. I wondered if he would have the strength to hold on. But I knew the answer. See, a part of my brother was in my mind now, along with echoes of a long-dead Hork-Bajir and a simple Ged. And yes, even a bit of a Yerk with dreams of glory. Marco smiled his sardonic smile. And is it true? Will we win? This is a very complicated planet, Marco. That's what I hear anyway. And it's a very strange universe. Anything could happen.
I'm like gonna cry. This book
know.
was so good. That's so beautiful and so tragic, and these books are so good. I can't. Every book does some shit that makes me go, wow, I really can't believe that these books went there. Nothing compares so far to what went down in this book. Oh my God.
That last moment, as well as like many of the moments of Jake like experiencing like some level of genuine sympathy for the dying Yerk, just really drives into me that like everything that Jake is doing, all of the sacrifices he is making, his drive to do all of this is ultimately driven by this very deep love for humanity and this anger at people who are trying to like hurt other people, which by the way, extremely fucking Jewish.
I was just gonna say, like, God,
I just love Jake so much. Like, he is forced to make so many hard decisions throughout the series, but like it is so clear to me in this book that like he does have this like very kind and genuine center to him.
Yeah.
And it just so fucking kills me.
Yeah.
He's so real. I love this book.
This book was
really
phenomenal. Like,
yeah.
Really genuinely special.
Yeah.
I'm floored.
Yeah. These books truly do approach like the moral complexities of war with more care and nuance than most American war media directed at adults.
Yes. Easy. Wow. Yeah. Again, about this bullshit that they just threw, I still have I literally can't even fathom enough to make theories. I guess I can give my book rankings.
I have my rankings too, if we want to give our rankings together again.
Sure. Have yours changed from last time?
Just a little.
Okay.
Specifically, this is now my number 1.
This is now my number 2. The Visitor still, again, I think that is just like really an emotional attachment thing. I think that this book is undeniably the most well-crafted, well-told, emotionally effective book in the whole series. I just have particular book to emotional overlap. So I think it's going to take a while for that one to be dethroned. So that's the only change in my book ranking. And then should we rank the main kids?
Let's.
Okay. Let's start from our bottom ranking. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
Bottom for me right now, still Cassie. I love her, and I love her a lot more after this book. Still bottom for me.
Bottom for me is Rachel. It is not out of any dislike for her. I love Rachel. I love all of these characters.
Yeah.
And Rachel, just like out of all the characters I love, is just like at the bottom. I love her, but she is at the bottom for me right now.
Same
Might
for me and
change
Cassie.
as I keep reading the series, but yeah.
Okay, next
Okay.
for me, Tobias.
Me also.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think that and again, I am so I am trying very hard when I am doing these rankings to like not take into effect like knowledge of the characters that comes up later in the series
Right.
as much as I possibly can, which is obviously, you know, hard. But I think that like, yeah, right now Tobias is like my number 5. And again, I love Tobias, but number 5 right now.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. Okay. Next for me, Axe.
Next for me is Marco.
Very fair. I feel like a lot of our rankings, like I feel like between Rachel and Cassie, you're either somebody who prefers Rachel or Cassie. I feel like with Axe and Marco, you either prefer Axe or Marco. So I feel like this is very funny. I feel like this is a good interchangeable one for this list. My next is Jake.
My next is Axe.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Then for me, Rachel. She's still my main girl.
It is Jake for me in the number 2 spot.
Okay. And then my number 1 is Marco. Of course he is for me.
And my number 1 is Cassie.
Yeah. So I believe we are on to our last segment here.
Yeah.
Now Vermorphs. So if you had to morph right now, what would it be?
I would be a deer.
That was in my contenders. Please do tell.
Really?
Why a deer?
I like them. Now Vermorph. What are you?
Vermorph. Okay. So it is like, I don't know if it's technically summer yet, but it's summer. It stays so bright for so long and it's hot out. I fucking hate the summer. I hate it. I hate when it's sunny out. I hate when it's hot and humid. So if I were going to morph right now, I would morph into a bat. First off, because I think it's funny because I am a goth. Second, because they're so cute. Third, because I would be nocturnal and I would get to be in a nice cave and I could just come out and fly around in the night sky when it's all nice and cool. And when it's not nice and cool, I go to my cave and nobody talks to me and it's dark in there and it's wet and it's cold. I would be a bat.
You're
right
in your
now.
cave.
Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely, yeah. Okay, if we stop now, I think we'll be stopping like an hour shorter than we did last time.
Which is amazing because this book was absolutely more insane and fucked up.
Yes.
But like, I think that there's just less to say because what the fuck? Like, it really is just like, it's all right there.
Yeah, like I feel like so much of our discussion of this book is just like that. Like, if two men were on the moon and one of them killed the other with a rock, would that be fucked up or what?
So fucked up, man.
Like, yeah, it would be. You're right. What if a teenage boy had to experience death via starvation by proxy from the alien parasite in his brain? Wouldn't that be fucked up? Like, okay, Applegate, that would be fucked up. You're right.
Wouldn't it be so fucked up if in this thing's last moment of life, it saw some fucking Eye of Sauron shit that looked at him and then that's it. That's all we know is that it looked at him and that was really scary and bad and we don't know anything else or why it was looking at it or where it is or what the fuck. Yeah, it would be fucked up.
I'm so excited for you to learn more about what that eye was.
Me too. Noah, thank you so much for joining me here today. This was a fantastic conversation that I think was as dark and real as this book asked for, and really good work not saying a single fucking thing about whatever the fuck that was.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun.
Can't wait to have you back. Nevermorphed is hosted, edited, and produced by Will Williams. Our theme music is The Chase by Joey Hendricks. Our title is by Eddie Feely, and this podcast would not exist without Mike Schubert's podcast, Potterless and the Newest Olympian. You can find his works at shub.es, that's shub.es. Nevermorphed is a proud member of Hug House Productions. You can find more at hughouse.productions and follow us on Tumblr at Nevermorphed. Get morphin'! On March 27th, 2024, Elon Musk was deposed in a libel lawsuit filed by Ben Brody. Musk's lawyer, Alex Spiro, tried to retroactively mark the deposition as confidential, but it wasn't.
Of course I can ask him, do you think you committed actual malice? Do you think you were reckless? Of course I can ask those questions.
The deposition is a new Hug House podcast reenactment of the entire deposition, word by word, in full, taken very seriously.
Things that he did wrong.
But that's the point. That's not what you're allowed
Until he really just can't anymore.
Not what you're allowed to do in the deposition. You can't just get him talking.
The deposition drops on the 4th of July, 2024, with 4 weekly episodes. Subscribe on your podcatcher of choice or find us at hughouse.productions today.